Let's talk to Shad Olson, who we're going to talk to longer later in the week. But for now, he caught my eye with something he posted on Facebook, and well, you know, I said, hey, let's get him for a few minutes today first, whet your appetite for longer next week, and yeah, we're getting back in the swing of things here on Backlash after like a month off. So, Shad, thank you for joining me.
Well, between hurricanes and holidays, Adam, it's been a spell, but it's great to be talking to you again.
That's one thing I will mention. You're in the Black Hills of South Dakota, where you don't have too many Jewish people and Jewish holidays, and you definitely don't have too many hurricanes. So I have to point that out.
Yeah, shorter on the latter than we are on the former. We kind of like the former, and we have no use for the latter. So
theoretically, Jews are free to move there, but I don't know how a hurricane could ever get itself up there. Even one that moved as far into the country as Harvey did, but I don't think it got too far past Tennessee. South Dakota is a little much to ask.
Yep, absolutely. We get 4-foot snowstorms, and I guess that's as close as we get. But I'm glad you came through the severe weather in good fashion. Look, the situation with the Me Too campaign, and I'll just launch into it. I know you're kind of pressed for time, and it's just something I wanted to be able to share briefly. But this indignation and the sort of pearl clutching, hand wringing that's being attached to this. I understand that the behavior of Harvey Weinstein is inexcusable. This is not in any way, and I want this to be the disclaimer. This is not in any way I guess an endorsement or any kind of an excuse or a justification for the things that he stands accused and he is alleged in multiple fronts as having done. But what I would say is we find ourselves, Adam, in this really interesting digital media age where there's all kinds of behavior and there's all kinds of things in terms of stretching of the previous moral and societal norms that I think just have contributed overall, and I think you would agree, to an overall cheapening of just the moral sense of value that's placed on the human form and the specialness and the sacredness and the divinity of God's creation of our bodies, which he meant for us to use in certain ways according to his plan and purpose. And yet we have this one-sided feminine outrage, which seems to be for all the world to be nothing more than an extension of the militant sort of feminazi expressionism. As we know, feminism in the modern age has nothing whatever to do with equality between the genders and has everything to do with basically being able to treat men like the excrement that we might scrape off the bottom of
some equality.
of a rodeo.
Feminism, there is equality in the sense that they want to abort male babies and they want to abort female babies, and there's nothing more important than that, the feminism. And I guess transgender babies, but they're probably more considered more sacred.
I'll agree with your point. Feminism, and as we know, they are such a shrinking, and they're a shrinking minority of women, because women have realized, and Milo Yiannopoulos says this brilliantly. I disagree with him on several things, but he says this brilliantly. If there was equality in the viewpoint, if people were equally distributed among the viewpoints that feminism is about equality, there would be inequality in the polling of people who self-identify as feminists. And what we see instead is that about 90% of people say that they're in favor of equality between the genders, and yet only about 17% of American females identify as quote-unquote feminists. And so that's because people have come to the point that they realize implicitly that feminism has nothing to do with equality of the genders. So that being said, this Me Too hashtag campaign just seems to be nothing more than an opportunity to pile on men and to hate men and to cast men as the abusers and the aggressors and the bane of all that is civilized society. And what I posted essentially was that it would ring to me a whole lot more authentically if this conversation about Me Too and all the rife and scurrilous scandals surrounding sexual assault and sexual mistreatment and sexual harassment in the workplace and this kind of thing, if that were accompanied with an equally stringent conversation about Snapchat orgies and Instagram accounts with 1,400 selfies with girls in various states of undress and in their underwear and without their underwear. If we're going to be found on the discount rack, it would seem to me that common sense would preclude us from being indignant when people expect us to act in ways that are cheaper than the advertised price.
Right. Don't forget the duck faces either on Instagram, though those were played out like 10, 15 years ago. But one other point. Go ahead.
How are we surprised by this? You know, after Miley Cyrus, and after the twerking and all of the things that have been attached to these various ways that we just sexualize girls from such an early age, and then we expect them to be the traffic cops and the accuser and the judge, jury, and executioner when some young man or old man or somewhere in between decides that possibly they're ripe for the picking and easy for the taking. It's a completely mixed message.
To play devil's advocate, the casting couch is nothing new, and at a certain point, don't you have to say these women are whores? I mean, essentially, they knew what they were getting into, and they went along with it. And but the response to that is, well, that's the way the system works. Otherwise, I wouldn't have acted. Well, yeah, but if you're a real hooker, I'm sure you would have taken the money for free for not doing anything. That doesn't make you any less of a hooker.
Well, there's that old saw. There's that old joke that says, the man walks up to the woman and says, "Will you sleep with me for $1?" Mm-hmm. And she slaps him in the face, and he says, "Well, how about $1 million?" Mm-hmm. And she looks at him and says, Are you taking me for a whore?" And he says, "Madam, we've already established that. Now we're just haggling over price."
True.
And
True.
If for every woman who's come out and said that Harvey Weinstein was the destruction of her dignity, you could probably name 10 or 15 or 20 or 50 people who we will never hear about,
right?
Who got starring roles and great careers and absolute fame and fortune for their willingness to sell their virtue mm-hmm. at a higher price.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that. It's funny seeing, I don't know if hoisted on their own petard is the right word. It's funny how the word petard is never used out of the context of hoisted, by the way. That's a side note. But it's just funny seeing all the pictures of Weinstein and knowing about how generous he was with Planned Parenthood and all the pictures of him with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and just such a good liberal guy. And Rush Limbaugh, if you've heard him the last few days, has talked about how whether all these things are just a front to get girls and have power in Hollywood, of course it is. Maybe the sentiment is there, or maybe it's a convenient belief. But what's interesting to me with the whole Me Too campaign is I wonder if it's a way of distracting and, making it more diffuse that, well, it's a societal problem. It's not a Harvey Weinstein problem, though obviously he's finished. Well, maybe not. Rush thinks he's going to have a comeback, but the rape charges are pretty serious. It's not just a liberal Hollywood thing. It's everywhere. Sort of like the way the rape is turned into a white-on-white thing, even though the statistics show a different perspective, but that's why the emphasis is on campus rape and lack of consent, when it's a much more subtle thing than a lot of other rapes going on, especially with Islam. I don't know. I'm digressing a little bit, but you know what the point is I'm trying to make here.
I agree with I agree with you from the aspect of just the simple degradation of the moral mores mm-hmm. of culture, and the breakdown of traditional Americana was going to do nothing but bring with it these kind of various and sundry symptoms and the symptomology of the loss of Judeo-Christian values in our culture. We can't sell those things away and erase them without there being some demonstrable impact on the behavior of people. And here we find ourselves in this atmosphere that's deprived of those kinds of moralistic considerations, and then people are surprised when other people are mistreated in that sort of arena. I will disagree with sort of casting this as an endorsement or kind of a tip of the iceberg thing in terms of a widespread rape culture. I don't believe that we live in a rape culture. Rape is wrong. Rape is against them. Rapists are, they're tried, they're convicted, they're accused. If you're even accused of rape, for all intents and purposes, your life in many ways is over, regardless of whether you're found innocent or not. Ask the Duke Lacrosse program about that. Mm-hmm. So this idea that we live in a rape culture, that's a feminist canard, and we need to make sure that we don't fall prey to that. But
right, I'm just saying that they're trying to diffuse the real issue by making it a society-wide rape culture, when really it was an issue for specific people in Hollywood who had power and generally were liberal.
I agree with that completely, and beyond that, Adam, I think that what we're looking at is a very deliberate burning of one of their own. Mm-hmm. Sort of a burning of the wicker man in order to inflict this sort of pivot and another flanking attack on the administration and the personhood of Donald Trump. The only way that they could revive this issue, and you see Hillary, marching out in front of it and alongside it and ushering it along in this conversation. Gloria Allred as well with this this accuser.
Lisa Bloom, good. Yeah, her daughter didn't perform too well on this thing. I seem to have lost Shad, and I have him back on now as Gloria Allred, which is always a good person to hang up on. I was saying, obviously, her daughter Lisa Bloom got a little burned reputation-wise with her support of Harvey Weinstein for money. But you were making another point, Shad.
Well, I was just saying, you know, the Hillary and Gloria Allred have marched this out once again, and it's been done at the expense of sort of the cremation of Harvey Weinstein's career and his legacy as one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. And they're willing even to sacrifice one of their own to that extent just to be able to revive this and bring it back around and make it something that they can try to inflict political damage on the administration of Donald Trump. And I think that's what we're looking at as much as anything. So many of the social issues that are coming up, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the NFL and all the, you know, the race baiting and everything that's gone on and the conversations about kneeling during the anthem, every single issue, as you notice, comes back around and is used to try to cast aspersion and take a bite out of the momentum of the Trump administration in one way or the other. Now, whether that's
not
just
working too well,
it's having exactly opposite, you know, the opposite effect.
Right.
Whether it's just opportunism and poorly calculated opportunism on their part, or whether it's by design, I can't be the arbiter. But it's, as you say, it's not working.
All right, we'll talk to you later in the week. Any final thoughts on the Me Too issue, Shad?
I think the most important thing that men and women can possibly do is to remember that men and women need each other. We genetically and for whatever reason, we do like each other and need each other in many different levels, and that I think society would be much better served by realizing the specialness and the value that there is in remembering the inherent differences between men and women and celebrating those differences, and for women to reward gentlemanly behavior when and where they find it. They'll find themselves getting more of it. They can be assured.
Great point. Shad Olson, we'll talk to you later in the week. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Adam.